Okay, so here we go. So Dave, now you saw this locksmith opening this door, and he was friendly enough, and he told you more or less how the business worked. And I have been looking at locksmith in my neighborhood for a long time, and I have asked them a few questions, and I was told that they made a good amount of money, and especially at 3 o'clock in the morning when someone gets locked out of the car, and especially here in Canada when people get locked out of their car, is a minus 20 temperature. So people really want to get into their car or houses. So I wonder if you could tell us just for a few seconds, because I focus a little bit on the money aspect of everything. How much money is on just regular, being on a regular locksmith who open, I don't know, houses and cars for a living?
Well, most of my good friends run general locksmithing business, and I'll tell you they do quite well. Precisely how much they make, I don't know. I've never asked, but they do well. They have a good, solid middle class life that they live. I think we're going to see, Alan, at least in the West, any new appreciation for the trades. And although this industry is very tiny, we're a trade. So are plumbers and electricians and carpenters. And in the West, we have turned our Roman nose down at the trades for so many decades. Now we don't have enough people doing the work. And I think we're going to see prices increase across all of the trades, and we're going to attract more and more young people. What will also happen is that we will have to lose the stigma against people that don't go to college and opt instead for something on the vocational side of life. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being a tradesman, and we need that to just be recognized everywhere. It is not currently.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Some plumbers, they make more money than some lawyers. And I just suffer for something just very unfortunate, because here the temperature right now is minus 20. The pipes of my plumbing building, they froze, and we had to pay a gazillion dollars to the plumber, who just came whenever he had space in his agenda to come and see us. And people think that having a trace as a job is something second tier. And I tell you, this plumber is laughing all his way to the bank.
Yes.
But okay, so you switch from regular locksmith to opening safe, and in your book you mentioned that that pays even a lot more. Can you just give us an idea? Let's say someone who is not as talented as you, a regular individual who opens safe, I don't know, in jewelry stores for a living legally. What would be like I don't know, an average income for that individual?
Well, jewelry stores, a person who specializes in jewelry safes would do quite well, as those tend to be the very best safes. Jewelers own the very best safes you can buy, by and large. For obvious reasons, the amount of the inventory they keep in those safes pretty much dwarfs everybody else. So they keep the. As to the income, well, there aren't very many guys, in the United States anyway, who can make a living just specializing in doing jewelry safes. There might be one or two of my buddies that can get away with doing mostly that. But in general, most of us professional safecrackers are jacks of all trades or generalists. We open everything. Uh, Not always, but most guys that are good at this will tackle anything from a high security safe in a jewelry store to a bank vault to a low end sentry that comes from Office Max or Office Depot. Uh, I don't know. The truth is, we don't talk about. I run a website where professional safecrackers congregate and tell stories and help each other on hard jobs. And we just rarely ever talk about money. Sometimes a newbie will say, "Hey guys, what's the average opening charge range, around the country for a particular safe?" And what we have discovered is that prices are very regional. A particular safe that might cost $350 to have opened in Portland, Oregon, might be $800 in another city. So there's a lot of regional variation. in the prices. And I would assume therefore there are going to be variations in total incomes by the people, but we just don't ever talk about it.
Wow, amazing. Okay, perfect. So then you find that you are gravitating towards safe. How can you tell us, first of all, how do you learn? And then secondly, how do you start getting clients and what kind of clients were you getting?
Well, when I started with Mr. Corey, there was no training. You just
Mm.
learn on the job by hook or by crook. We have training classes now. I've been teaching locksmiths how to open safes since 1987 or 8. And Lockmasters and Mark Bates Associates, there are some companies around the country that do this kind of thing, that train people. But most of the time, it's just learning on the job. Start with keys and locks, and then you work your way into safes and vaults. And if your boss thinks you can handle it, they'll start giving you more and more challenging jobs. And the really, really hard ones, they might send a senior tech with you if they're trying to get you trained up. There's a lot of different ways it's done, but mostly it's learning on the job.
And can you tell us what was your first safe that you had to open?
Yes, I can. My very first safe, and I got lucky. It wasn't Fort Knox. It wasn't a jewelry safe. It wasn't a bank vault. It was the lowest of the low, which is what you want when you're just starting out. It was a Sentry, one of those ones that you can go into Home Depot or Office Max and sometimes Costco and find. And they're just little boxes, mostly made in China. We don't even really like them to be called safes, but they are. Mr. Corey flipped it on its back and told me where to drill. Back then, we didn't have any real optical equipment for seeing inside a safe or vault. We just had little portable flashlights. So we would drill a hole, usually a big hole. If we were lucky, only one of them, but many times we would drill many holes. And we would just use a flashlight. Champion Spark Plug, the Spark Plug Outfit Company, they came up with a spark plug light, which was just a little otoscope, like a doctor's otoscope with a battery powered light in it and a little magnifying lens. And you would just look in the otoscope down the hole that you drilled and hope that you were in the right spot. That was the gig back then.
And how standardized has the safe manufacturing become? Are they all manufactured in China and they have all more or less the same mechanism, or do they have all of them their different, unique proprietary way of making them, so that it will be for you a different challenge every time you see a new brand?
When we leave the low end, the Sentries of the world and what have you, and go into the world of real safes, there's a huge difference between today and say back in the 19th century. Today, everything for the most part is cookie cutter. We have what we call standard footprint locks. You can take a lock out. I don't know if you can hear that dog barking. If you can,
That's
I'll
okay.
pause for
We dogs are okay.
we have standard footprint locks. You can buy a lock from a distributor, a combination lock with a dial and tumblers. And you can go up to a modern safe, take the one that's on there off and put the new one on. Back in the 19th century, early 20th century, you couldn't do that. There were no standard footprint locks. Every manufacturer made their own locks or bought them from Sargent and Greenleaf and Yale. And there were many, many different mounting patterns. Nothing was standardized. The mechanisms were different. The way that manufacturers made bolt works back then, they were all different. That's why there are so many more questions about antique safes on my website than there are modern safes. It's because they're much more of a mystery, and there are way more design differences in the old stuff than in the new stuff. The new stuff's mostly cookie cutter.
Well, okay, so now can you tell us a little bit of how you became an expert? I mean, you started with this standard, easy to open box, which is what a beginner would love to start with, and
Right.
then how you start climbing that ladder of difficulty.
Well, you hope to start out with an easy one. We have the occasional young guy who gets thrown into the deep end of the pool,
Mm.
and that is trial by fire. And The negative side of trial by fire is that quite often it burns a young, usually a male, it burns a young guy, and he just, I don't want any part of that. And they bail out and go back to general locksmithing, having gotten in over their head. You want to take things logically. You want to go to kindergarten before first grade, before second grade, and in safe opening, you want to start with the easy stuff and then slowly work your way to the more difficult stuff. And the best way to do that is to work for a big company that gets lots and lots of jobs so that your dispatcher or your boss, like a boxer, you don't want to start off as a young boxer fighting for the world championship. You want to work your way up. And that's super important because confidence is crucial in this game. If you lack confidence, don't try to be a safecracker. Just don't. You'll fail. Uh, Most of us who do this kind of work professionally, the truth is, we have a little bit of OCD going on. Many of us don't even have hobbies. Safes and vaults, that's what we do for a living, and it also takes up most of our hobby space. Maybe not all of it, but a good chunk of our hobby space is our vocation. That's quite unusual. Most people who work don't have their job be their hobby, but most safecrackers do, at least in part. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second half of your question.
Me too. So let's move. Let's move on. Okay, so your biggest clients are banks, jewelry stores. Who else
Oh,
is part of your clientele?
right. Well, the end users that I open many safes for are mostly banks and jewelry stores and supermarkets, and also residential folks who have gun safes in their garage or sometimes in their bedroom. Uh, those are the end users, but my clients aren't those people by and large. My clients are safe and lock and vault companies who call me to open safes and vaults for them. I'm a subcontractor. I don't usually interface directly with the public. I've got a locksmith company or a safe company in between me and the public. They're
And
my clients.
what is the major reason why someone calls you? Did they just forget the combination, or it doesn't work mechanically? Why do people call you?
There are four reasons why someone would call me. Number one, they have a safe, but no combo. That can happen in a variety of different ways. They might have bought it at off Craigslist. They bought it locked. They have no combo and they didn't need it opened. Grandpa may have died and only Grandpa had the combo. Now the family needs to have the safe opened so that they can settle the estate. The second situation that arises is they have the combo, it doesn't work. There's a malfunction somewhere. So we have to try to figure out what it is and to overcome it. The third scenario is a burglar has tried during the night. The safe's owner comes into the business and discovers, oh my gosh, my dial's been knocked off, my handle's been broken, or my hinges have been cut, and otherwise a giant mess has been made. And the pro safecracker's job will be to come in and clean up the mess. And the fourth and final category of things or reasons why people need a professional safecracker is simply malfunction of the operator, user error. They forgot how to dial the combination. This can happen. If you have a homeowner who doesn't get into their safe but once every few years, well, they may forget the process. Or they may have wound too much time on the time lock. There are a variety of reasons why users can make errors, but that's the fourth and final category. There really isn't a fifth. That's it. Either no combo, malfunction, burglar made a mess, or the user's making an error.
Okay, so let's say my grandfather died, and
Yes.
I know he has a safety deposit box there, but he died and didn't give me the combination. So I called you because I don't know who else to call. I wonder if you have seen. I'm sure you see many things in safety deposit boxes, but if first of all, what are the most common things you see, and what has surprised you when you open one of these boxes?
Well, I'm never surprised anymore. I think I've seen everything that you can see in a safe, except Jimmy Hoffa's head. I didn't uncover that one yet. The most common things are just exactly what you would think. Guns, that's a big thing. Guns, rifles, ammo, cash, drugs, lots and lots and lots of drugs, uh, baseball cards. In fact, probably the single most valuable thing that I've ever seen inside a safe was fairly recently. A lady was settling an estate for her brother who had passed, and in the bottom of his safe was a book of Topps rookie baseball cards from 1952. And when I saw the date on the binder, I thought, no way. Because my favorite baseball player when I was a kid was Mickey Mantle. And the one had just sold on eBay for $2.8 million. So sure enough, we are leafing through her Topps book from 1952. Boom, there's Mickey Mantle. And these were laminated. I don't think they had ever been touched by human hands. So I assume, I never did touch base with her later, but I assumed that she probably got $2 or $3 million for that Mickey Mantle card. Now I've seen way more money than that. The Federal Reserve used to be here in Portland, and I never asked anyone there while we were servicing their vaults how much money there was. Obviously billions of dollars. I mean, just carts and carts and carts and stacks and cages and boxes, just money everywhere on pallets. And
Wow.
uh,
Okay. So you haven't been surprised, but have you been? Let's say you open my grandfather's box, and I see something that surprised the hell out of me. Let's say that I don't know, my yeah, I don't want to bring examples because I may put my foot in my mouth, but have you seen people saying, oh my God, I had no idea this was in this safety box, and they are just totally over the head full of surprise?
yes, many times. Yeah, when people are opening the safe of a person who has passed, they are frequently surprised and cry out, sometimes in pain or sometimes in pleasure, depending on what it is that they have found. It can be anything from piles of money to bearer bonds to stock certificates
Oh,
to photos of women that grandpa or dad had dalliances with that the families didn't need to know about.
wow. How about this? The only knowledge that I have about safecrackers are in the movies. I mean, you have been doing this professionally for almost all your life on the legal side, but have the bad guys ever tried to hire you or seduce you to come to their side and say, "Hey, you can have this much more money if you come and help us out"?
Not explicitly, I think, but cannot prove that at least several times people who had safes illegitimately tried to get me to open them. Whenever someone calls and says, I got a safe in the trunk of my car, will you open it? I'm instantly suspicious. And when mention, well, let's meet down at the police station, they never do it. So I make the assumption that it was nefarious on their part, but I don't know that. Maybe they just had other plans. But no one's ever met me at the police department to have the safe in their trunk opened. Not one person ever.
Well, among your clients, you had the estate of Prince, the singer, the artist, and first of all, I wonder if you could share two words about that experience, and secondly, if you are allowed to divulge any other clients that you had that people may know about.
Um, no other people can be divulged. Uh, I have to be my wife's an attorney,
Mm.
so she works very carefully with the non-disclosure agreements, and sometimes she'll rewrite them for me if they're too onerous or much too much of a burden. But on the Prince job, that almost didn't even happen. When they first contacted me, I thought it was a prank. I didn't think it was real. And the reason is that on April 29th, 2016, ABC ran a story that Prince's vault had been drilled open. I was astounded, like, because I would have heard, the people that can do that kind of work, I know them all. We're a very small group. and no one had taken credit. And I, hmm, so bizarre. So well, then 2 weeks later, when they contacted me, I was trying to find out who had actually opened Prince's vault. Well, come to find out, ABC had made the story up. The vault had not been opened, and it did need to be opened. So once we got over that hurdle, the law, the firm, the legal firm that was handling the Prince estate at the time, we were able to get in conversation and set up the job. And the woman who I dealt with there, Tracy, she was just a splendid person. Picked me up at the airport, bought me a Starbucks coffee en route to Paisley Park, and was my guide while I was there. She was just a wonderful person. I really enjoyed that spending that day with her. We get there, and the DEA folks are there. They hadn't left, and they made quite clear no one goes into the vault once it's opened until we clear it. Once drugs had been found by the Carver County Sheriff's Office, and they had brought in the DEA a couple of weeks prior. See, I didn't actually go there for another 2 weeks after ABC ran that story. This is why the whole thing was so confusing for a while. You wonder why do media folks do that? And
Mm.
when you track it down, ABC National credits their local Minneapolis ABC affiliate with the story. You go to the affiliate, it's an unnamed source. Right.
Wow. In your book,
Yes.
you are driving towards the airport, and then one of the persons that you had taught to open safe, he calls you and he tells you that he suspect that there has been an inside job in a jewelry store where he went to open a safe, a box. I wonder how often are inside jobs in this business that they know the combination, they open the safe, and then they make a believe that someone, I don't know, crack it open.
Right. The downside there is most of the time when that happens, when it's an inside job and someone has the combo, does no damage, they get into the safe, steal the goods, and they bail. We don't even usually hear about that. We might read about it in the newspaper, but there would be no reason for that client to even need our services. When my friend Shane was called in that particular case, the reason is that the people who had pulled off this inside job, they had the combo to the vault, and then they wanted to make it look like a burglary. So they took an oxyacetylene torch and they cut through the skin on the outside of the vault. Modern bank vaults are made with a very thin stainless steel skin on the outside, and then a foot or so of high density concrete and what have you, and hard plate and other things. And it was obvious, it was just obvious that this thing they were the victim of an inside job, because there is no way burning through an eighth inch, less than an eighth inch piece of stainless steel can open a vault door that is 16 inches thick.
Mm.
It's just not going to happen. But that one went down on the books as a professional, successful burglary, because the investigator and the insurance guy, they have got there several hours before Shane did. By the way, he was there to give the end user a bid, and the insurance company a bid on repairing the vault. It
Mm.
was only a coincidence, because the investigators were still there, that he even knew what they thought, and they weren't interested in what he thought,
Wow.
which I thought was just bizarre. You'd think they would want to get to the truth, but maybe they just wanted to get home to their families and have dinner. I don't know. It should
Uh,
have been obvious. Look, you don't have to be a safe or vault expert to realize that taking an oxyacetylene torch and burning on the outside of a vault door is not going to open it. There's no chance it can open it.
Wow. At what moment in your life you decided to pass down your knowledge to other people? You are teaching now how to open safe, how to become a professional safe cracker. You have workshops. You also have books. You are supposedly the leader in this industry. So when is it that you say, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of time to pass my knowledge to other people behind me?
Well, that's important. Uh, this is an industry that I do worry about its longevity, and also about having enough people in it to service There are several areas in the United States where we have a terrific shortage of safecrackers. So many of us are going great distances into areas that we hope that will be filled with future people. Time will tell. As I said, we got to bring the trades back. Being a safe and vault technician, and we're a tiny industry, but we are an industry and we have tradesmen that work in it. We'll see. Time will
Uh,
tell.
okay, how about the motivation to write this book and share your life experience with us?
Ah, oh, that's kind of a fun story. It was just a coincidence. 10 years ago, I was contacted by a famous author named Steve Hamilton. He has written a bunch of, I don't read fiction, but Steve has written a bunch of very successful fiction. He contacted me out of the blue and he said, "Hey, would you mind proofreading a book of mine?" It's called The Lock Artist. He was about a deaf mute guy who was super talented as a key lock picker and a safe lock manipulator. And so I did. I proofread it and enjoyed the whole book. And then he said to me during this process, if you ever have you ever considered writing a memoir? And I said, no. And he said, well, you should. And ever since that day, I started thinking about it. Well, maybe I could do that. So I started writing it a year or two later. It was actually finished just prior to the Prince job. Well, once I got the Prince job, I realized, well, hell, I can't release a memoir without that. And because of some legal things, I had to wait a few more years before we could release the book with the Prince chapter added and not violate or have any legal ramifications. I had to wait for certain things to happen before we could publish.
Wow. Okay, and you also became a professional philosopher or a philosophy teacher, and that seems like such a huge disconnect from opening safe boxes to teaching philosophy. So can you tell us a little bit about your philosophy tendencies?
Well, I've just been drawn to big pictures, difficult
Mm.
questions, the hardest questions that humans confront. It's kind of a curse, but I've just been, I guess, blessed with that curse my entire life. Trying to figure out, is there a God or is there just us? Is there more? And whether or not there's a God, is the material world that we inhabit, does that really exhaust all of reality, or is there something more? Are there realms of existence that we can't apprehend? Those are hard questions, and people disagree. And I find them fascinating. So I like to read books on those topics.
Do you find that being a philosopher makes you a better citizen as well? Let's say right now in the United States, there is political upheaval and discord between one political party and another one. And I think many times if we could just see ourselves in the place of the other ones and trying to figure out what is it that they are thinking, maybe all of us could become better citizens and could have more harmony. I don't know if a philosophy course will save the nation, but maybe it will help. What do you think?
I completely agree. One of the things that you do, if you are a philosophy major as an undergrad, or if you're in graduate school as pursuing your MA or your doctorate, you know that one of the requirements is that when you write a paper, very first thing you do after you state your thesis is you entertain the very best and most powerful objections the other side can raise against your view. And then you do your very best to refute those objections, and then you go on to finish your paper. Now, I would make a philosophy class mandatory at every high school for that reason alone, so people could get into the habit of not straw manning the other side. See, that's what happens on Twitter every day, millions of times. Straw manning the opposition rather than steel manning the opposition. You want to give the other side the very best rendering that you possibly can before you refute it. So yeah, I think philosophy, and by the way, it's not just philosophy. I would say that forensics, speech and debate in high school and in college also does that. Um, a very good job. When you're in speech and debate, you never know when you're going into a round which side you're going to have to defend. So you end up in developing a kind of a deep appreciation for both sides, because there are good arguments on both sides of most of these hot button issues. They wouldn't be hot button issues if they weren't contentious to begin with. We need a better appreciation for the other side. The other side is not evil for the most part. They're not stupid. They're perfectly rational, reasonable people who just have different priors than you do. And maybe a meeting of the minds could even come to a resolution, but we don't get that if we straw man the other guy rather than steel man their position.
Right.
Yes. So I
Well,
agree.
well, Dave, I mean, you already have the coolest job in the world. Not only that, but you are passing down your knowledge to other people. And you also have notoriety. You have written this book. You are recognized as one of the best in the country, if not internationally. What's next for you?
Well, I don't know. And I should probably address that last point. This comes up in just about every interview. Uh, there is no such thing as the best safecracker on the planet. We have every professional safecracker has an area that he or she likes to specialize in. And if you give me a particular safe or a vault or a scenario, I can tell you the names of the very best people for that particular job. And it's not ever going to be the same people. There are specialists. There's just no such thing as the best safecracker. I have friends who are world class experts at picking high security key locks, primarily from Europe. Phil Scherer from Boston, for example, he's probably the Earth's reigning key lock expert. He knows 100 times more than all of the rest of us. We have Lance Mayhew. He's an e-lock spiking expert, taking electricity and opening electronic locks kind of covertly. He's the best in the world at that. There are people like Mike Swearzy from Montreal, who is one of the best combination lock manipulators in the world. In fact, I'm urging Mike to write a book. He's that good. So there are just different specialties, and there is no best safecracker.
Right. Okay. But still, what is next for you? You already have almost, you have accomplished so much. I mean, and of course, if this is what you do for the rest of your life, I'm sure you will be a happy camper.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but do you have any other goals?
Oh sure. Yeah, I'm writing a novel currently,
Nice.
and the protagonist, of course, is going to be a safecracker. I'm going about to start a YouTube channel on safecracking trivia for the general public. I've discovered there's a tremendous interest in this stuff, and really not much out there to satisfy it. So I'm hoping to remedy that. And I've semi-retired from the field. I'm only going out into the field 2 or 3 times a week now on particularly fun or challenging jobs. The
Uh,
rest of them I just refer to local people that I've trained.
this is a time in history in which we are putting a lot of emphasis into inclusion and diversity, and this is a male-dominated industry. Any
Yes.
chance that we will have more ladies opening safe?
Yes, we started with zero at the forum I run is called the Safecracker Support Forum, and we started with no ladies. We have three now,
Great,
so that is improvement.
great.
Look,
Well,
here's the truth though: we're never going to have parity. Anybody looking for equity in safecracking, it'll never happen. For the same reason it would never happen for firefighters. There are just certain physical demands. One of the reasons that I have semi-retired is that even though I am a male and I am a lot stronger than the average female, uh, some of the work is too difficult for me even now. So there are certain jobs that I just don't like to do.
what are the physical demands?
Well, if you are a rigger and you move safes, I have friends that are
Mm,
just fabulous at moving safes. You don't necessarily have to be a strong dude to do that, but it really does help if
I
things
see.
go south to be strong rather than weak.
Well, Dave, I wonder if you could tell us one more time the title of the book and where can the listeners find the job that you're doing, the courses, and I don't know, your YouTube channel, all the things that you have going on.
The book they can find wherever books are sold. Most libraries in the U.S. at least are stocking it. Barnes and Noble has it. Amazon has it. It's called Safecracker. It's that one on the shelf behind me. The classes, I'm sorry, you can't. come to my classes or be a member of my Safecrackers Club if you're not already a Safecracker. It's kind of a catch-22 there. Anybody that wants to become a Safecracker will find that it's a little bit difficult. But if they can get into the industry, they can then be in my club. I tell people every week I have to turn people down, and they're disappointed, but most of them get it.
Well, and how about websites or Twitter or any of these kind of means of communications?
Well, anybody that wants to reach me is probably best by email, Dave McOmie at mac.com, DAVEMCOMIE at MAC.com.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome, Alan.